All right, well, we come to the main billing for this evening, and that's where we get to introduce this handsome fellow, Michael Harris. He actually looks like his photo today, as I said when he came in. He's actually too young to have outgrown his photo like many of us. Oh no, I should say some of us here like me. So Michael's his business is excelcreative.com. His presentation tonight is about clarity, consistency, and charisma. He deals with content branding and helping you to tell your story. So I think at this point here, I'm going to hand over to you, Michael, to introduce yourself, and I think you've got a PowerPoint presentation as well too that you can share and load up on screen as well.
I do, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me tonight, and to everyone. I love this first part because I love getting to know all of your backgrounds, because as I will talk about tonight as well, that so much of our individual story and the way we approach content, it needs to come from our story and what's uniquely us. You know, we might do something that there are lots of business coaches. There are lots of, real estate agents in the world. There are lots of people who do the same job. But what is like the thing that makes you unique? And I love hearing those stories, and especially all the philosophy of this group as well, to find the tips and the tools and the ways to make things easier and get value from content. It's just fantastic. So yes, I am going to pause for a moment and actually share my other desktop. So I am making sure that you can all see that. Can everyone see big blue screen? Give me a thumbs up. I like that way.
All looking good. All looking
Working.
good.
Fantastic. It's good. As Nick said, the talk tonight is called Clarity, Consistency, and Charisma. And the reason I chose those three words as the title is because I believe that ultimately they're the three things that we need in a content strategy to bring people in. I love content, but I love content because I honestly believe in the potential to have powerful storytelling just transform our world, and the businesses in particular are right at the heart of being able to do that and to lead that and to be the catalyst in society for incredible change, positive change, purpose fueled change. So I just want to get right into it, but to begin with, I sort of introduce myself a little bit more fully. So my name is Michael Harris, as Nick said. The way that I run my business, I work with a lot of different brands and clients as a high performance brand and content strategist. So I help other companies with their content and creating their story and how to get the most value from that. But how I came to this point is probably about 15 years of a journey, to be honest. I spent 12 years in-house in both corporate and not-for-profits as a designer, as a writer, creating content day in and day out. I worked in a school for part of that time, where in particular I was just creating all manner of content every single day. The last 5 years, I've been consulting with clients and working one-on-one with a number of different people, and come to this point where it's strategy and storytelling. The way that I actually got here, though, there are three kind of strands in my journey, and I think it's helpful to kind of explain how I got to this point and how I got to the toolkits and the frameworks that I'm going to be able to share tonight as well. My journey started when I left school. I went to Macquarie University and I did a communications degree, incorporated PR and media, film and television, a whole lot of things that were really fun to study. It's when I first got exposed to multimedia and to digital media and websites, and a whole lot of technologies that have long since just fallen by the wayside. But it primarily taught me how to have a digital literacy where I could just learn anything. And that has been incredibly powerful. But I took that and I really just fell in love with visual storytelling and that ability to use these tools that I was being exposed to tell a compelling story. As I said, I was working at that point as an in-house designer, particularly in a community-focused environment. That was the school at that time. And I went from there, and so I studied visual communication more formally at RMIT, learn about branding, learn about effectively how to be a creative entrepreneur as well, and to bring that all together. And I love doing that. I went into the corporate world, But I came to a roadblock in my own story and my own journey, in that I found that what I was doing was a little bit soulless, and had, a deep time of introspection, trying to work out what I wanted in life out of my career, where I wanted to go. And I worked out that I wanted to empower other people, that people who weren't necessarily designers, people who weren't necessarily content writers, how can they actually learn the tools to be able to build their business? At the same time, I also then actually resigned from the job that I had, and I went to UCS and I did an MBA, particularly focused on startups and entrepreneurship, and wanted to combine, I guess, the knowledge that I had from the visual communication and the branding, and combine that with actual business strategy, with finance and accounting, with all of the various elements that make up making a business. So all that is to say, I come to this point today, I'm being able to share with you at a very interesting cross-section, where I have the tools in the background about how to actually produce content, but then also how to create that strategy moving forward, that it can actually build a business and move forward. So that's the basis from where I'm coming from with all of this. As I said, this brought me to Axel Creative, which is the business, the company that I run, working with clients. And the three things that I put into in the small print on my logo, if you can see it, is to clarify, strengthen, and visualize, because I think that that's an important aspect of what I can do to help people clarify their story, to strengthen their story, and to be able to visualize that out. But ultimately, the heart of it is storytelling, and that ability to actually capture hearts and minds. A very practical example of that is that if someone is pitching a business or a startup in particular, they've got, say, 10 or 15 minutes to just tell the whole story of their company, their app, their service, what they're doing. Often the instinct is to go straight into all the analytics, what the features are, what the product actually does. And the advice that I give to every single one of them is to take a step back and to start with the problem that you're actually solving. And often that comes from your experience as the founder of the company. What was it that instigated that idea? Where did that come from in the first place? And to connect the human element of that story, because that's what people are going to connect with. That's the emotion in it, as Nick was saying, that we need to start. So it's a little bit of my background and where I come to. And I'd like to get a bit more into the meat of this, but I hope that that was actually helpful in kind of framing this and where I'm coming from this evening in talking about it. So the first question that we need to ask ourselves is, what is content strategy? It's a term that we all know, we all recognize, but what actually is it? We need to take a step back though, and before we do that, we need to ask, what is content itself? And now there's a very obvious answer to this, the surface level, as it were. You've got articles, you've got images, you've got videos, you've got flyers, white papers, podcasts, all manner of things that you could actually class as content. Social media posts is full of content every single day. And often we have content overload. And I really think that, viewing it in such a black and white way isn't actually helpful for content. A better way to frame content is actually to look at it is something that your audience can actually engage with, because that's the purpose of content. If we're just creating blog posts and writing whatever we want, taking photos of whatever we want without actually thinking about the intention behind it, honestly, it's just vanity. And we're going to waste a lot of time, effort, and money as business owners if we're not actually purposeful in what we're doing. So we need to focus on the audience. And in that, so content is something that your audience can engage with. So when we're creating content, what is something that is going to be of value to them? This webinar, this whole group, I think is a great example of that, because Nick has put front and center something that's going to be of value to every single person who's part of this community. It's about the tools and the tricks and the content that is actually going to fuel that. And that sits at the heart of it. I think that's a great example of actually putting the audience first as you consider what your content is. Now, we all know that the purpose of content is sales, obviously, that would be a fantastic thing if we can convert everyone who comes in and just do it automatically. I love looking at some of those tools that Nick was talking about, because I think automating processes is fantastic to make that happen. But it's also not the only reason that we actually have content and the way that we publish things. Of course, the other one is authority, because we're building up that impression that people have. We're becoming leaders in the field that we're in the industry that we're in. So you've got sales and authority. There's a third one that I think gets glossed over a little bit as we're talking about things, and that is community. And that's actually where sales and authority come from. Because if we go in expecting people to dive straight into buying your product the first moment that they see you, it's not going to work. They're probably not going to understand your product properly in the first place, even if they did go through to sale. But often it can take up to 20 different touch points with your brand, with you in person before they actually buy. So I think that sense of building your community, content draws people in. And anyone who's actually brought in through content marketing into your brand, you're not having to pay for advertising to go and to find. And I think that that's a huge return for any business, is being able to actually have a community of engaged people. I'm going to show you a couple of conceptual things and toolkits that I have tonight about how I think we should actually approach content and our way of thinking about it, because not all content is equal. Not all content deserves all of our time and attention. And in particularly, I think that we need to get as much longevity and value out of a piece of content, particularly if it's something like a video or a book or a white paper, something that's going to be a bit more substantial. But at the same time, your community is going to engage with content like that really easily. But someone who's just floating past and a prospect, you need to get them in, like a breadcrumb coming through. Okay. Content strategy is about providing value to your audience to build a relationship. That, I think, is very important to remember, that it's about the relationship. And of course, the question that you need to know and remember in that is, who is your audience? Who are you targeting? It's very easy to say, I want to target everyone in the whole world because, my product is amazing. It's the best product ever. It's the best service ever. I want to target everyone. This is really unhelpful. It's unhelpful for business, first of all, because I feel that the more specific you can get, the more value you're going to get from a transactional point of view. You're going to get more traction with people if you can focus and become an expert in a smaller area. But from that same thinking applies to a piece of content that you've actually written, that if you try and be all things to all people, then it's not going to work. Has my screen sharing actually just switched over? I can't work out if it's the Chrome on mine. Can you still see the full picture? Can you see the rest of the screen?
No, it's all good.
Okay. Wasn't sure if the messages that were coming up on my screen were there. So who is your audience? What specifically, and to be as specific as you possibly can. If you're writing a piece of content that is for one of the people in your target market, give them as much value and be empathetic to their situation as you possibly can. People are very good at self-selecting in and out of reading something or getting more value. But if you can hit the mark exactly with the person, the audience that you're targeting, that is going to be sensational. Okay. Let's just back up a second though and talk about what the structure of content strategy is. This is a conceptual piece that I wanted to talk through about how we actually build up a content strategy, what we need to consider and how it actually builds out. The first place that we need to start with any sense of content strategy with any business before any branding is created is to take a step right back and to look at your identity, your vision and your values. Who are you? What do you stand for as a business? If you can't answer that question, if you don't know who you are or what you stand for, I would question why you're in business. I think that that's absolutely fundamental. And in the same way that that's fundamental to your business in general, for your content strategy, it sits right at the heart. That's why it's that circle in the middle, because it comes back to the core of everything you do. Everything in your content has to come back from who you are, why you're in business, what it is you offer, the practicality of that, knowing the specific of it, and the amount of clarity that you can actually get in what you offer your clients, what value you're giving your clients, and the reason that you are in business, the better. I would include all the kind of branding aspects, like the visual branding that you need to put in there as well. So knowing your logo, knowing your style, knowing your colors, you need to start with that before you then build out the rest of your strategy. And in some ways, I think that this is actually a little bit of a take steps, that before you get to posting on social media, you need to know who you are so you can be consistent about it. But once you have that sense of identity and who you are, there's another layer that needs to come into it. There we go. It was a bit delayed. I'm not sure if it was delayed for everyone else coming in. And this is your website and your profiles. And this is the things that are stable content, things that you're not going to change kind of year over year, that maybe, you know, every couple of years you might revisit it. But things like your about page, if you have videos on your website, the actual functionality to be able to set things up. This is the core operational part, all of the gadgets and plugins and everything that you need on your website to make it work, to make sure that's really strong. It also includes your social media profile. So if you've got a Facebook profile, making sure that you're using all the features that are available, that people can book time with you really easily, that you've got the about section is filled out, that all of the contact details are accurate and up to date. On LinkedIn, you can list the services that you have, that you fill out all of the different parts of your profile, making sure that they're really solid, so that someone who's actually coming in for the first time and discovering you has a lot of content that they can actually build from. So once you have your identity worked out, once you have your website and the profile and who you actually are, then you can start thinking about more substantial pieces of content. And I call these the anchor content, because these are the things that are going to take a little bit more time to actually create as well. A great example would be a video or an article that you can download. If it's something that you can actually download, like a resource, being able to get someone's email address in exchange for that. This is the level of content that we're talking about. And I think it's really important to have these in your business, something that's a little bit more substantial, that people are going to want to invest their time and energy to read and to view. But the other thing that you need to consider with this is that there actually is a little bit of a wall that sits around these content, just in the emotional energy that it takes to actually to read or to watch something. Someone who's engaged in your community is going to watch a video. I had a client actually the other day who was telling me that they had a 20-minute video that was just fantastic. It was full of great content, and it was a discussion between a number of people in their organization. There was a lot of value that was in that video. But people weren't actually watching that video or clicking into that video because they didn't know what to expect. So you need to take back some of that content, just like a bite-sized, almost like a granular bit of that content, whether it's a quote from it or just a highlight clip or something that's a smaller video that's easier to actually consume, and take that out. And so we call this the highlight content. So say, for example, that what the anchor content you did was a blog post, and you had it in there. Say you did a blog post once a week, it was there. You can get a whole lot more social media content out of that one blog post by taking a quote from it and putting into a graphic that you're posting on social media. Or you could, maybe there was a resource that's actually links into that theme. You could create it. So these are little bits of content that are fast and easy to actually create, that link back in to that piece of content, and make it easy for someone who just happens to be going past to see it, or for them to share it. Content is social. And if you want the answer to making content go viral, it's to make it something that people are going to want to actually share with their friends, that it has that instinctive social element about it. That's why memes are so viral, spreading information and just being shared amongst a whole lot of people. People love memes. They love the fact that they can relate to it, and that they can represent something that they believe to their friends. They can share it because they've got common values and common beliefs. That same theory applies to content. What is something that people are going to be able to share? An example of this is to use the example of real estate again. If you're a real estate agent, what is the value that you can actually give to people that's going to not just be about what you actually sell, but be of value in a transferable way? So tips about how, what to look for in an inspection, how to present your home, how to style it to sell it. All of these things are kind of within the expertise that you have in your industry, but it's value you can actually give to people. A question I often ask about audience is, and you consider social media in particular, why would someone follow you? and take away all the people that are like family and friends that follow you just because you're you, and they, you know, they love you, they're connected to you, or not. Maybe those people don't follow you, but you take away the people who have a natural reason to be following your business. Why are they actually there? What is the value that they're going to get from following you? And if you're sitting somewhere and you don't have an audience and you're looking to build it, that's the number one question that you need to ask. What is it that you can actually offer to your audience? Here's the secret though with this, the diagram that I was talking about. And I know it looks a little bit like a virus at the moment. Someone pointed out right as coronavirus is starting to really kind of dig in back in March, that's what it looked like. Which is a little bit unfortunate, but B, I think it's also helpful to show that, you know, this model can become viral. It can actually spread really easily. But the way that it does that is that someone going past, and you can see the little green dot that's there, that's someone who's just looking at a video on their phone, or they're reading they see like a graphic that's gone past in social media. It gets their attention, it gets their interest. They want to know more. So that is like the breadcrumb that actually goes along, and they go from there, and it goes into actually reading the full blog post that's actually there. So they're understanding a little bit more, they're looking a little bit more at what it is that you're actually offering, what it is that you do. They're getting more value from it, and they're becoming more engaged with you as a brand. They then go from there and follow it in. They're now on your website. Why would someone go on your website in the first place? You need to create that breadcrumb trail to lead them to actually get there in the first place, to want to be there. So by the time they've actually followed that through, they've read your content, it's fantastic content. Let's assume that for a second, it's fantastic content. All of a sudden, they're reading everything that you're doing. They're watching every video, they're consuming it all. They become a client and they're spreading it to their friends. So that's how that works. To build out that content strategy, that's why I think it's really important that you start from who you are, build out that strategy. But the purpose of doing that is to allow people to come in, and to come in a way that actually goes at the pace that your clients need to go, to have different touch points, to kind of build up that brand awareness, and to get that value from you, to build up that trust as well. What are some of the key takeaways from that I want you to get? The first one is, not all content is equal. Not all content deserves all our time and attention. And having a simple photo that you quickly put onto an Instagram story can be just as effective and just as valuable for you as spending 4 hours shooting a video and editing and creating all of that. So don't treat all content as equal, but know where the value you're going to get from it is, and to put that time and effort into something that's going to have longevity. The trouble with social media as well is you post something and then it's like a river. It just keeps going and it's gone. And then if you spend all this money creating that content in the first place, then it's not going to last. Whereas that more substantial anchor pieces of content is like planting a tree. If you've got a blog post, you can get value out of it multiple times across the week. And if it lives on your website, anyone who's coming there in the future is going to be able to read it. It's going to be fantastic for your SEO. It's going to get like that, the longevity is going to come out of it. And I think it's well worth investing into a longer post. The next thing is that you need to develop your brand identity. You need to know who you are, and you need to be certain about it. You need to make choices. What is the font that you use? What is the style that you use? If you took your logo away from everything, does it still look familiar? Do you know who it is that you are and who you're targeting? You need to have that sense of your brand identity. And you need to provide true value for your audience. They're the three main takeaways that I feel that you need to have. But there are two questions now that I think need to, that I want to look at. The first one is, what is your story? And a couple of framing questions. I'm going to do this really quickly before I move on to the next question. But you need to know what your story is. Who are you? Basic things like your name and where you come from are important. But go beyond what you do today. Where have you come from? What is the story? How did you get there? That's the next framing question, in fact. How did you get to this point? Everyone has something unique in business that makes them different to the next person. You need to know who that is and make it that story. People relate to stories. People connect with stories. How did you get to this point? And to know the strength that you can actually take from that and put into the story that you're projecting out. What can only you do? Now, this can be a challenging question for some people, particularly if, you're in an industry where there are multiple people. There are a lot of people who make websites, for example, but what is it that only Nick can do? There's a lot that only Nick can do, in fact. But, you have to ask yourself that question. No matter what industry, no matter what service you're actually doing, what is it that only you can do? And that's where your headline is. That's the content that you start with. Everything else that's assumed, taking websites as an example, if you're engaging a website designer, you assume that they know how to code. You assume that, they're going to build a website that's got SEO in it. You might still need to have that, reassure them in your messaging that that's what you can do, but that doesn't become your headline. These are things that just, I'm paying a lot of money for a website. I'm expecting them to be there. What's the one thing that only you can do that sets you apart? Make that the headline that you're going with. And who do you help? The kind of related question to this, I think I'll jump to as well, is what are you really selling? For the real estate example, again, I'll try and keep on theme with the different examples that I'm using. But for a real estate agent, the simple answer to what do they sell is houses, obviously. But what do they really sell? What they're really selling is connecting people into the places they're going to have significant birthdays and milestones and memories. It's, it's the family dinner around the table. It's the moments that they're actually selling. It's the space. It's what that house represents and what that enables for them. What are you really selling? What is that transformation that you're allowing for people? These are the questions that frame that sense of story and where you start, how you really dig into it. And I hope that really helps you to think about your story in a fresh way, in a new way. The second question that I want to talk about now is, how do you evaluate your strategy? How do you evaluate a piece of content that you actually have? This is you've written a blog post. How do you know if it's any good? You've created a design. How do you know if it's any good? You've created a banner, or you've used a template. How do you know if it's going to hit the mark? And to do that, what I'm going to go through with you now is a toolkit that I call the Axel Impact Method. This is a toolkit that I created for business leaders, for people who are, who are salespeople or business owners, people who don't have a design background, who don't necessarily have a content background, to be able to objectively evaluate a piece of content, whether it's something that they're creating themselves, if you're taking a DIY approach, but also if you're working with a marketer, if you're working with a designer, how do you know if the work that they're doing for you is actually going to hit the mark for what you need? So I sat down and I went through a whole process over many months. It was a toolkit that evolved probably over the space of about a year, in fact, of actually working out what are all the considerations that you need to have. And what I'm talking about here is not just, I don't like the color green. I like this font. I want to do this. My sister doesn't like it. The normal frame of reference that we use to evaluate something. But what if something is not my particular style? How do I know if it's actually any good? So what I'm going to share with you now are 9 principles that are ways to look at what you're doing. And the design is to be high level, so you can use these principles to look at the entirety of your strategy, or you could put it as a laser sharp focus down onto a particular item or a particular piece of content that you actually have. So it's called the Axel Impact Method, and I'm going to go through each of them one by one. The first one is purpose. Is your objective clear? This is number one because it's where you need to start with any strategy, any piece of content that you create. What is the purpose of what you're actually doing? And when I say that, I mean, what is the goal? What are you trying to achieve? If you're sending an email for an event, the most important, well, I guess in the first place, you need to sell the event and to do all that. But if it's, say, like just before the event, Nick has got people who have signed up to come to this webinar. They're coming to go there. The most important thing that he can send in an email is the link to Zoom to get on. That is the purpose, is to get people in. If you've got a flyer, if it's to get, again, if it's for an event or it's for a product, you want people to look on your website or to pick up the phone or to call you. What is the purpose and the objective of what you're doing? On a higher level, what is that alignment to purpose that you actually have? What is the bigger business goal that you're trying to do? You need to sit that down and literally place that in front of any piece of content that you create. Why are you creating this? Why are you sharing it? Who are you targeting? What matters most, and what is the single most important message in that? So that's purpose, number one. Number two is hierarchy. Is the most important piece of information the easiest thing to see? Now, I mean this in a visual sense, a visual hierarchy, but also in a structural and kind of the flow that your customers, your audience actually go in. From a visual point of view, let's look at this screen. Hierarchy is quite clearly the most prominent visual element. It's bold, it's larger text than everything else. It's the first thing that you see and your eyes drawn to it. The question is that is slightly smaller. It's secondary. If they were both the same size, you wouldn't know where to look first. So that there's that little subtle hierarchy. They're both the same font. So it's not like I'm choosing different things or going off brand with it, but there's just subtle differences to create that visual hierarchy. The logo that's in the corner, the Axel Impact Method, is not really important. It needs to be there to badge it because, I want to kind of collect them together that these 9 principles are all the same, but that's a secondary thing. In fact, it's tertiary. It's like the third thing that you need to think about. Hierarchy is first. In the same way, if you're creating content or creating a post, do people know where to start? If you're writing fantastic content, but it's just coming up as a block of text, and I see this all the time, and it's got a very pretty photo with it, you don't know what the content's about. But if you can add a word or a title or a phrase that goes into the actual image itself, that gets your attention, that makes it bigger. And it's hard with certain platforms. On social media, you can't style text the way that you want to. Maybe you can on a website. But there are ways, as I said, you could put the text actually into the graphic itself to grab people. Are you taking away elements? Are there things that you can actually remove for that? Is there a sense of journey in the narrative? If people are going to your website, does it make sense as to how they find out information, where they actually go, when they go down the page? There's that 3-second rule that you want people to have on a website, is to know exactly what it is that you can offer them in 3 seconds. If they don't know what value, what transformation they can have, you're probably going to lose them. I'm pretty sure that's actually the basis of the Story Brand book as well that Nick was talking about. So if you want to know more about that, that is a really good resource to look into and to read more about. Okay, the next one is consistency. Now, this is consistent in both again, a visual sense. Does it feel familiar? Are you using the same style and fonts? If you take your logo away, does it all look like it's from the same place? This is where logos and branding came from in the first place. That sense of creating a common identity so people knew which company, which business they're relating with, they're doing business with, so they can come back to you. But you need that consistency, because apart from anything else, that gives trust. It takes away uncertainty. There is that predictability. That doesn't mean that everything you do has to be absolutely the same. There's a little bit of expression in it. All the slides in my talk tonight all follow the same basic principles and rules in the way they've been designed, but they're not the same. There's room for expression in it. There's room for difference, and it's going. The 9 colors that are here, there's one color behind each of these principles, and I've used that as the basis for my entire visual style guide. They are the only 9 colors that I ever use. It's a lot of colors, and I think that normal businesses should actually restrict it and not use 9. But it's having that discipline to say, I need to be consistent. It's that discipline to look at the details and say, I'm using the same font. These are small details, but they make a huge difference in the way that you're perceived and the way that you're presented. I was also going to say, before I move on to clarity, I was going to say that the other thing with consistency is also about the timing. If you're publishing a blog post, if you're posting on social media, if you're doing a Facebook Live, do it every day at the same time or every week at the same time, because it builds up that subtle cue of people expect this is when things are going to be. You don't have to post every day to get customers and engage a community, but you do need to be consistent. And I think this is one of the hardest things, especially if you're going in and you're creating content that is every so often. Creating that consistency means that people know when to tune in, when to expect it. They're going to go looking for that content. Is it consistent? And the 4th principle is clarity. Can this be clearer? And in many ways, I think this is one of the most important. So important, I put it in the title of the whole talk. can what you've created be clearer? What can be taken away without actually losing any meaning? As I said, the purpose, if you're sending an email to clients, what is the one bit of information that they really need to have? Is that front and center? Is that very clear? When people are writing, one of the biggest mistakes in writing copy is that people bury the lead and they put it 3 paragraphs in. If you know what the most important thing is it really clear? And the best way to test that, the best way to try that is to give it to someone else and to see what if they take it. Test it on people. See, can this be any clearer than it currently is? There's a famous quote. I can't remember who it was that said it. It was someone, a famous American from a long time ago, who apologized for writing a long letter because he didn't have time to write a short one. And it's that idea that actually becoming clearer and succinct and concise takes a lot of effort and energy and rewriting. Writing 300 words is not a problem as long as those 300 words serve you really, really well. If they're 300 words that don't say very much, then I wouldn't use them. But if they're 300 words that are just really well considered and say exactly what do you do, the transformation, then that's all you need. And I think that's fantastic. Principle number 5, personality. Does it have character? Does the piece of content that you have characters? Does your brand have character and personality? Is there a specific feeling or tone of voice? This isn't to say that you need to be, loud or extroverted or anything. You can be professional and you need to work out what that personality is. But does it have personality? If are you using emojis or things that people will actually relate to? Does that fit your brand and who you are? Particularly if you're, as a person, you're the product that you're actually selling in a consulting sense. Is your personality coming through in the brand and your marketing? And does it fall flat anywhere? I know people who are fantastic on video, but the moment they go into photos on Instagram or somewhere else, the energy is gone. And I would encourage them to kind of rethink the way they can actually show that personality and that energy that is there in person through their content and coming. The 6th principle is awareness. Does it fit the context? Where will your audience, how will they be engaging with it? If you're creating a video and your audience is watching it on the train to work, assuming that that's what people are able to do in the future again. If they're watching it on a train, are they able to actually listen? Can they have audio, or do they need to have something that is just text that they can read? Awareness also includes things like if you're giving a presentation physically on a stage, you're aware of the stage and what's around you. You're aware of the way that space is, where the audience is, where your screen is, how things can be seen. You need to have that same awareness for a piece of content that you create and video. Think through, what comes before. If you're hosting an event, what are people doing? I like the fact that when Nick was advertising this event before, I saw him say that, if you're eating dinner or you're doing other things, you can just listen in the background kind of going. That shows an awareness of the fact that at this time of night, people do have other things that they need to balance as well, even though they want to be able to listen to it. Having that awareness in what you're actually doing, it helps you because more people are going to connect in with your brand, but you need to know that awareness and kind of just be considerate of your audience, be considerate of what they're doing and how they're actually going to engage. Number 7 is measurability. Do you know what equals success for you? Are you tracking metrics? I think that people can overdo data. They can focus on it a little bit too much. But what equals success for you? What does that measure? How many people are you looking to engage online? How many sales do you actually need? How many people do you want reading your blog articles? What is that metric? What is success? It may be none of those things. In many businesses, the whole purpose is actually to engage the community. An example of that is a program that's sold into a school where there's one person, maybe it's a deputy principal or the principal who actually chooses to buy a psychology program, for example, in that, but you can actually use your content to engage a whole lot of extra people so that the teachers and the rest of the staff that actually have to implement it, who don't make the decision to choose whether or not the school is doing the program, but they can be engaged so that when the principal comes in and says, this is the program that I want us to do, they recognize the name. They feel familiar with the brand. They trust the content and what's being presented to them. So you need to know what that measure is to what you're trying to do. So it doesn't necessarily relate to just sales. It doesn't necessarily relate to just audience growth, but know what success means for your business and your brand and for a particular piece of content. If it's to get people signing up for an event or a webinar, or to buy something, very easy. But sometimes it's not as easy to know what that metric is. Principle number 8, we're almost there, is connection. Is it personal? People connect human to human. And often if we're building a brand, the number one thing we can forget to do is to have that sense of identity, that sense of personality being in there. What's the experience if someone picks up the phone and calls you? If you have a receptionist or an assistant or someone who's actually answering the phone, are they friendly? Are they nice? This is all part of your content strategy, is because it's a connection. It's a touch point. Is it personal? Are you putting your face onto videos? Are people actually able to relate and connecting with you? Because that is the most important thing. Even in the biggest brands in the world, they put people front and center. Because that ultimately is where that connection lies. Is there a sense of connection? And trust. Do you do what you say you do? Are you showing people what you're doing? In this current climate of COVID, it's really important to actually, if you are hosting an in-person event, if you happen to be somewhere where that is allowed, you need to be able to communicate to your audience that you are following all of the guidelines that you need to be COVID safe, that there is going to be social distancing in place, that trust needs to be there. Do you deliver on what you say? Do you meet client expectations? Do you follow through on what's there? These are the questions that you need to ask. Hopefully, for most businesses, trust should be really high, but it's an important consideration. So as I said, these are the 9 principles. And I hope you understand the concept of this being a lens to actually look at something. So it could be a really fast analysis that you do on a particular piece of content. You could sit down once a month or once a quarter and look at your whole strategy. Is it aligned to purpose? Is there a sense of hierarchy? Are you being consistent? Are you as clear as you can be? Is there personality? Are you aware of the context that surrounds a piece of content? Are you measuring things? Is there connection? Are you showing and building trust in what you're doing? It's a really helpful thing. It's actually, I have a PDF. I might see if I can try and give a link to it afterwards, which is just a simple PDF where you can actually go through, and I've got like the 9 boxes out and kind of just write quick notes as you're thinking about something. I like to refer to this as a health check as well, because it just gives you a sense of a pulse of what's happening. And what I would normally do if I was doing this one-on-one with any of you, I would actually sit down and get you to rate each of those things where you are on a scale of 1 to 10. Where do I think, you might be really consistent with things, but you're not really clear. Maybe your purpose is fantastic. You know exactly what you're doing. Trust is great, but the personality is not coming through as often as much as it could. So actually to rate yourself on that scale of 1 to 10, and it gives you an idea, okay, this is the areas I need to work on. This is the things that I need to strengthen in my strategy. And this is the part where strategy fits in, because strategy, you need to know what the goal is. You need to know what you're actually aiming to strengthen. If you're naturally gifted in certain areas, that's fantastic. So some people can just stand up and sell, and they're great at speaking in person. If you're able to do that, use that as a strength, but focus your energy onto the things that you're not good at, that you need to actually strengthen, that you need to learn or get help in to do. Because to create that full sense, if you can get a 10 on all 9 of those principles, you are in a very healthy position for your business to grow and to keep going. But one thing I wanted to add to this though, is to picture the journey at number 10 as the top of a mountain. Because if you just run up a mountain for as hard as you can because you want to get to 10, say you wanted to post every single day, you wanted to do a live video every single day and just like knock it out of the park, that's fantastic, but you're going to end up exhausted. And it's not going to be sustainable in the long run. So I'd focus on the things that take you up, just like, go from a 3 to a 5 or a 7 to an 8, and just kind of build up gradually. Set a goal. Maybe with content, if you want to write a blog post and say, I can do this every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks, or I can do it every week, but actually set something that's realistic and that you can actually achieve. because that's really important. You don't want to run out of oxygen. You don't want to run out of energy as you go. That content needs to be consistent and it needs to be for the long run. Okay, you need to build a framework when you're creating a strategy. And these are some of the, I guess, pointers for how I work with people to build a framework, and how I suggest that, you can actually start to give that sense of structure. And when I say framework, I actually like the end point of this is to actually have a calendar. So you know what you're going to post, what your strategy is down to the day as you build it out. Have an actual physical calendar you've written it in, or if you can print it out. I use Airtable if you're looking for other online tools. I love Airtable, but that's really great because I can actually put in different, I don't know if anyone's actually familiar with it as a product, but it's like Excel on steroids. It's really useful, but you can put in lines, put in entries on a different line as if you're putting it into a spreadsheet, which for me actually then connects through to my to-do list, which I use ClickUp for that. So it goes through automatically, but then I can change the view because there's a date assigned to each article and I can look at it as a calendar. So that's a tool. I think I've got it on a list somewhere at the end as well. But Airtable is really great for managing your content and being able to just put things into different classifications. Okay, to build a framework, what resources do you have? You need to be honest about this. What human resources do you have? If you have a team of VAs or assistants that can actually write for you, are you using them? Is it just you? What technology do you actually have? What technology can you use? If you have a phone, you probably have a very good camera. There are a couple of ways to tweak the way that you're filming things to make it look as professional as you can. Are you lighting well? But do you have the technology and the tools that you need to be able to create things on the go? We live in a time now where there is so much that is available to us, so many tools that we can use. Let's put them to use. Let's actually, make our lives easier by doing it. But the third thing you need to ask yourself is budget. Do you have the budget, both in the investment of time and energy that goes into creating content, but also do you have the resources to be able to bring in someone else, to bring in an expert who can actually create things for you? If you're not very good at writing something, it's not worth the time and effort that it will take you to write something that to the level that you need. Bring in an expert, bring in someone who can actually have that perspective and do that for you. But you need to know what the budget is for that and whether or not you can afford them. Frequency, expectation, and depth. What is the frequency that you can sustain? As I said before, you don't want to run up that mountain and run out of energy. What actually works? What's the expectation of your audience? Do they want content every day? Do they, can you have a blog post once a week that you email to your email list and that's enough? Only you can answer that. Only you can actually ask, what is it that your audience is expecting from you? What is required to actually engage an audience? It may be that you need to create content every day. I don't know. I don't know your business, but they're the guiding questions that I would ask clients, as well as to look at what is the expectation of the people who are following, and what does it need to be for the ideal audience and clients that you're actually targeting, and what's the depth of the content that you need to go. By that I mean, if you're just skimming the surface, it's not really any meat that's in there. But if you're able to create like a long blog post that Google will just love the content of that, and your SEO is half done for you in creating that. If you can actually create that deep content, how deep can you go? What is your expertise? What value can you provide for people that can then be shared out? Set the balance. This is like, picture this like a music desk. You've got all the different sound inputs coming in. Some microphones you have louder, some you have lower, some different, parts of it. It's a balance. And often you need to listen to it and flow with it. Month to month, change your strategy. Look at what's resonating with people. Look at what's working. This is exactly how I work with clients, is to say, the point of data at the end of the month to look back and to see what people are actually engaging with is so people love this piece of content. This was something that was really interesting. Okay, finding ideas. Trust your ideas. First thing I can say, absolutely trust your ideas. You won't know what works until you test it with your audience. Just give it a go. If something doesn't work, if you don't like it, you can always change it, but test it out. Try it and see what will work. Use Post-it notes to capture ideas. I love Post-it notes because you can write things really quickly, really succinctly, put them down and then move on in your mind and your process so that you're on to the next thing. But then you've got all the post-it notes written out with your ideas, and you can say, okay, where are the patterns here? Maybe, you've mentioned clients and testimonials a few times. How can I put this into a piece of content? How can I post this regularly? What are the patterns that are actually emerging? Get it out of your head and onto the table. Again, that's something that I think is really useful to have another person facilitate with you. So if you have someone else on your team, or you need to bring someone in who can actually help you brainstorm, that can be really a really helpful way to bring ideas, to ask questions. And look at other businesses, not just people who are in your industry, but look at completely different industries, completely different brands and service offerings or products. Look at retail, look at it's like someone completely different, and find inspiration. What can you take from what they're doing and apply it to your situation? You want to be different. You want to be distinct in your own industry. So get ideas from the outside. Think outside the square. It's very rare that something hasn't been thought of before. Have a look at the brands that you buy and love and services that you actually use regularly. What it is about their content and their marketing that really stands out and really grabs you. And I guess that leads into the question is, what do you find valuable? What do you actually want? Put yourself in the mind of the audience. What content would you think would be really helpful, would be really useful? And create a monthly content calendar, as I said. Actually write it down and put it and say, okay, every Tuesday, I'm going to post this comment. Every morning at 7 a.m., I'm going to do a Facebook Live. Every, Wednesday, I'm going to publish a blog post, and actually write it out. And the more you can do in preparation before the actual time as well, the easier it's going to be. I know from talking with people that they struggle to post on Facebook every day, because the idea of having to sit down and write a post and create the graphic and to put it onto Facebook is exhausting and takes more time. And often they can schedule it in, but that time disappears. If they've actually done the work, they set aside a couple of hours at the beginning of the month, written out a whole bunch of blog posts that they can actually, or short posts, they can actually do it, so that on the day, all they're having to do is actually, get the content, copy it in, paste it, they can go on. Or maybe they can get someone on their team to actually do that for them. Or you can use a scheduling service. Later.com, as in later.com, is fantastic for that. And they have a great free plan to automate and schedule your Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, and Twitter content as well. I really recommend that. I think you can do like 30 posts a month for free in doing that. So you can actually schedule things so you don't even have to post it at the time. Make your life easier. Okay, and resources. This is just to round it out. A couple of just tips that I have for a couple of the key areas that we've touched on. Tips for branding. First of all, have great customer experience. Before you worry about logos or having a collateral that's going to be on brand, make sure that your customer and client experience is second to none. That is what's going to get people sharing you and referring you and moving on more than anything. But treat that as a piece of content, that the way that you're interacting with someone, the way that you're answering the phone or an email, that is a piece of content. Make sure that it's actually aligned to your purpose, that there is that objective, that it's clear, that it's consistent, that there's personality. Bring that same thinking into that sphere. Be distinct and memorable. You're going to share your story. You're going to tell the story of who you are. You need to be different to the stories of everyone else around you. Don't be afraid to be different. Don't be afraid to be yourselves. Not everyone is going to love you, and that's okay. It's one of the hardest lessons that I had to learn, is that, not everyone, you don't have to be for everyone, but the people that you are for, the people that do resonate with you, are going to be your biggest fans. And that's fantastic. But you want to be memorable. You want to stand out so that people know. Be consistent and be human. Be yourself. Tips for creating. I love Canva. I don't know if it's something you guys have talked about before. I have degrees in visual design. I know how to use every desktop publishing software that's out there, but Canva makes life easier. You can replicate things easy. You can create templates. You can get a designer to come and create templates for you that you can just replicate and to do that. It honestly makes life easier. You can apply it into any type of media that you need to produce from it. If you need to, create a profile heading in Facebook to a specific dimensions, it makes it easy to do that. I would explore it. Canva has their free version of it. I 100% think that the $15 a month or whatever it is for the premium level is worth every penny that it just saves in time for you. But Canva is great. I can't speak highly enough of it. Use free elements, unsplash.com, have great photography. Unsplash is a community, a website that was created by photographers who just wanted to share their work and get it out there. So it is free to use without even having to acknowledge the photographer if you don't want to. It's, use high quality images. But like the templates website that Nick was talking about before, use stock libraries and use templates that are available for you. Be critical about them, tweak them, get them to a designer so that it's on brand and on color. But if you're 90% of the way there with creating a document that looks professional, that you just need to have it tweaked a little bit, it's so much easier and less time consuming than having to get the entire document created. And it'll make you look professional and sharp really, really easily. Next tips are for design. Use white space. Everyone knows white space from luxury ads and the way that perfume is sold. That's where it came from originally. It was these brands that could afford to just be flippant in the way that they use white space. They're paying for space they're not using in a newspaper or a magazine. And at the time that was just so controversial. But use white space in a really thoughtful way to give that feeling today of luxury and being a premium service. Also, just being consistent with your spacing, letting words breathe and have space around them. That's how you look professional, is to make sure your spacing is good in a document. Be consistent in your style. Less is always more, and focus on actually having great photography. Whether that's photography that you're getting in and a photographer to actually come and take great photos of you or your product, or you're sourcing well. If you're using a stock library, do an extra sort of 10 minutes, 20 minutes of research to go deeper. So you're not getting just stock standard images, but actually find the ones that resonate, that have that emotional element to them. Search out like a little bit deeper to find what you can use that will work. If you can take a photo yourself, that's fantastic. If you can't, just be really, really critical of it. And finally, tips for writing. Write, rewrite, write again. That's the way to get something that's clear and consistent. Put the most important thing first. Number one thing that you can do in your writing to make it better and sharper is to know what is the most important thing. I'm going to start with that. I'm going to lead with that, because everything else is redundant. People can stop reading as long as they've read that first sentence. They've got the value. They've got what you needed out of it. Grammarly is another tool which is amazing and fantastic, and I also think is well worth paying for the premium version for what it allows you to do. But it spell checks things for you. It gives you grammar checks, making sure that everything is right, it's on point, that you're consistent. It's a really, really helpful tool. And if you have someone who writes for you in your team, I actually think that giving them a subscription would be really beneficial. It's something that I actually use myself, even though that I'm writing and editing. The final step for me will always be to put it through Grammarly, just to make sure that I haven't missed anything as it's going there, as I'm writing content for clients. And create a content vault. If you create a piece of content, use it again. Put it into a place where you can actually repurpose it. Say you write posts on Facebook, put it somewhere where you could get another team member to take that post and put it into the right Facebook group on a certain day, to tag it, to build up that knowledge of what your content actually is. That will be really valuable. Oh, tips for posting. I mean, there's an extra slide that I didn't realize was there. Schedule your posts with a scheduling service. That will make your life easier. Consider each platform separately, because, for example, you want to look professional. You can send a post from Instagram through to Facebook, but you can tag people to the Instagram username on Instagram. If it comes up with the plain text on Facebook, it looks a little bit strange. So make sure that you're just thinking about that you're actually tagging people natively into the right platform, that you're considering that links work really well on Facebook and LinkedIn. They don't work so well on Instagram. Just consider what platform you're actually going into and where your audience are, and customize it for that. Look for established audiences that already exist, where you can share your content, where you can share your message into. That will amplify your message a lot more. And put time to post into your calendar, whether it's a planning strategy session once a month or regular times during the week. Even if it's as simple as I'm going to set aside 20 minutes to go through LinkedIn and actually engage with the content that my connections have done. That is a highly valuable thing to do. Finally, I just wanted to reiterate that what I'm talking about and the framework that I have here is literally the way that I work with clients. That this isn't just something that isn't tried and tested. It's actually the way that I work with people in a monthly structure. And I wanted to show you this because I start with a monthly planning session. And I think that's something that, that even without expert support coming in for, you can actually, a way to plan it, set aside time to actually plan out the month ahead. At the other end of the month, make sure you're collecting all of your analytics, make sure you're getting that data and putting it in there. And then in the middle, that bespoke kind of mix of content that you actually have that suits your plan and your business and what you're actually doing. And that brings us to the end of the content that I wanted to share. This is where we open up to questions, Nick. I don't even know how I've gone with the time. I hope I haven't gone a little bit too far.
Awesome. No, that's been absolutely fantastic. Great process. And yes, you're obviously quite an organised person. So for creative people, that's some of those things there. You know, so we sort of struggle with those a bit. But that organisation is actually what really makes it happen. So
you're talking about, Nick. I'm totally organised.
Yes, you're not. All right. Anyone got any questions for Michael?
Yeah, I've just got a quick question. I missed the name of that scheduling service that you said that you mentioned, Michael.
It's called Later, later.com.
Thank you.
As I said, got a free plan, which you can do, like we can do a post a day on the free plan, which I think is excellent and really.
I've just popped that through to our team to check out, since OneUp app has had some problems, which is another posting tool. Andrew Komenos.
Question, Mr. Michael. Do you, so if you look, you said about metrics, right? And if you look back at your content, like what's the best way, for instance, to look back at your content and go, all right, what posts are good and what posts are bad? And I know you're going to say, oh, well, watch their engagement. But here's the thing. Sometimes you'll post, like a lot of the time, you'll post a post and it'll get good engagement. And then you try it again the next year or 3 months later or something like that. And it's just bombs out drastically. Yeah. So how do you get that consistency of engagement? You know, because obviously watching the metrics is going to help you with a lot of different things. But what are those things it helps you with, and how do you make sure you get that consistency of engagement?
Well, to your metrics point, I think that it's important to look as high level as you actually can, because if you're looking at a single post and saying, okay, this only got 1 like or 2 likes in it, and then just dismissing it, you're not getting the full story. But if there's a particular, look at the content type that you're posting. And if you, so say you were posting a Facebook Live every single day, and over the big picture, people are engaging with it, that's far more valuable story than looking at saying, okay, this one didn't really work. People weren't answering in there. People also just don't engage. That they will read the content, they will consume it, and it will drive you insane. That reply, and they don't do it. I think it's important to actually to have offline conversations. If you actually have clients and people who are consuming your content, to talk to them about it, get them to ask questions, find out what's actually resonating them and what's working. But then also the data does actually tell you a lot. Look at engagement, not just in simply how many people liked it, but look at the full spectrum. We've got, whether something was liked, if it was watched, actually, first of all, that's engagement. But if they're liking it, if they're commenting on it, if they're sharing it, if they're tagging other people in it, that is engagement. And that is fantastic. But the tricky thing as well is that different platforms, they all have an algorithm which can just mess with your mind, because sometimes it's like dark magic or voodoo. You're trying to work out how to get traction, and if people aren't actually engaging, the post might not actually even get out to an audience to be seen. And that might be the reason that it's not getting any engagement or traction in that. LinkedIn is a classic example, though, that when you're actually bringing people in, if you comment on something, if you tag someone in, even in the comments, it gets shown to a much wider audience. And so trying to get people who are actively doing that can be your big champions. I think that's going to be really important to get them engaged. And seriously, don't be afraid to just stop doing something if it's just not working. Sometimes I know I'm very...
Are you telling me to stop doing something there, Michael?
I just know for me that if I like something in particular, I like something that I'm doing, I'm not going to let go of it very easily. But sometimes you need to decide, actually, it's not worth the time and investment. An easy example of that would be if you were investing time into creating Instagram stories, but your main goal is actually to find new customers, to get outside of the people who are actually following you. That's not going to work. Instagram stories are great for engaging people who are already following you, who are already in your community. But if you're spending time and money on that and you're not getting a return from that, just stop doing those stories and put it into something that is going to get traction. So, into a piece of content that can be shared, that can go into a group, or, at the very least is accessible to the outside world. Rethink and don't be afraid to say, this isn't working, I'm going to try something new. And to have space in your strategy every month to try new ideas, to mix it up. You don't want to just do the same stale old thing. You can be consistent, but still actually have new ideas.
All right. Well, thanks very much. We've got one last question here. That'll be from Debbie.
I just wanted to know if we could just see the slide that said tips for posting again, and then the one after that, just those two.
Absolutely.
I wrote most of them down. I missed two.
Make sure I'm doing this. It's actually the tips for posting. So you can see that. What was the one afterwards that you wanted as well? I think I went to...
Yeah, just let me won't be one moment. It was the next one.
The next one was to talk. Was this
That's
one?
it.
Okay. So yes, so this is literally the way that I work with clients. This is the structure and the way that I do things. So you start with the planning session at one end and the analytics look back on the other end, and the mix in the middle is completely customized to what the strategy is required, what content is required for that client to do it. But I thought it was a helpful way to visualize it as well. So I hope it helps other people as well.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks once again for that, Michael.
Thanks.
That was actually really good. So, and really good for me as well, because I've got a fairly active brain. So that just really helped to put some context around the content creation. We create a lot of content here. Fortunately, we've got two people that are responsible for some of that on here. We've got Lorena and JM. So they're two of my team over in the Philippines. And they do a lot of the hard work as well too. So absolutely vital, sort of having a team of people to really help to drive that all out and really to manage it as well. Doesn't mean I don't do any content. It's just the management of it all.
I think particularly when you've actually got a team as well, that those 9 principles that I was talking about is really important to do as a team as well, and to actually have everyone on board with it as you're using it. Just as a point to throw in there. Sorry, Nick, to keep going and trying to move on.
I'm with you there as well too. All right. Well, we do have a prize draw for tonight as well too, and you've got something to give away today, Michael.
I actually have 2 things. So I do have as the prize and what we'll pull out. I wanted to offer doing an hour and a half strategy session with someone as a prize, whatever area that they actually need to be able to do. That's normally valued at $400 to spend that time with me and to do that. So that I think is really valuable as the actual prize as well. I did also want to say though that to anyone who would like to sit down, I've made available 3 spots in my schedule this week. If anyone, and the first 3 people who actually to comment in the chat to say they'd like it, to do that brand health check, and I'll actually go through and sit with you, do the 9 principles and have a look at it. So the first 3 people that actually are able to do that, I'll spend that time as well. But to get to the winner, you'll get an hour and a half of my time. However, we can best make use of that. So,
Excellent. Well, that's great. Well, looks like you've got some takers in the chat already. So,
If you were the fourth, Nick, does that mean you get special treatment and get the fourth one? Is that how that works?
Always works that way. All right. Well, let's. So congratulations, Jane, Anita, and Debbie. Looks like you've got some time there with Michael.
Excellent.
And for the big one, we've got a unique way of drawing it, which those that have been here know before. That's the wheel of names. So got all your names in there. We'll spin the wheel and see who comes out tops. Probably one of those ones that have already put it in, which would be great because I'm fourth. And the winner is Paul Bottrell.
Fantastic. Well done, Paul.
Fantastic. That's excellent.
That is great. Nick, I might need to get you to help me link up with some of the contacts.
Yeah, we'll link up with that. So Lorena or JM will shoot you through and link you up on Messenger.
Fantastic.
So you can be in touch with each other. All right, we've got a couple of other prizes as well today too. Andrew, you said you would be happy to offer something today.
Oh, mate, don't lie to people. You begged me.
Uh,
All right, so I got a small prize and a big prize to give away. One is a 3-month access to my Surge Sales Academy, which is basically an online sales academy where you learn how to sell, how to put your sales process together, how to put your sales strategy together, and how to build your business. And if anyone has seen any of my work or knows what I do, I always get results for people. So that's worth $120. And then the big one, which you can do whatever order you want to do them in, Nick, is a 1-hour result strategy session with me, valued at $500. So, which means you sit with me one-on-one, and we fix whatever issues you have in your business to make you as a consultant get from where you are now to a multi-6-figure business, because that is what I do for people, is take business consultant, or take consultants in general, consultants and coaches to multi-6-figure businesses. That's what I do.
Alrighty, and I have to say, Andrew is very good. He's worked with me in my business, and we've some great results with it. And I've seen really good results with some of the people that he's worked with as well too. So well worth it in the session. So let's draw the first one.
Which one's that, mate? Which one? The little one or the big one?
The big one.
The big one. This is the big one. All right, there we go.
And the winner is Debbie. Awesome. Okay, and maybe if you just pop your email address or whatever and phone number into chat, if you like to, Andrew.
Send your details in a private chat to me in the chat box, Debbie, and I'll organise with you.
And
3 months access to the Sales Success Academy, Surge Sales Academy, Ron Pierre.
There we go, Ron. Excellent. Fantastic. Well done, Ron. Excellent. Well, that is pretty much a wrap for this week. Thanks everyone for coming along again. It was definitely well worth it. This was a session I was looking forward to, and I have to say that Michael didn't disappoint. It was some really good information, some great stuff there. So thanks again, Michael, for coming on at short notice. We only asked him last week, so he thought he might have 3 or 4 weeks to actually prepare, but he had 3 or 4 days. So thanks very much for the short notice.
My pleasure. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Great to spend the night with you.
And next week again, we're on again next Tuesday at 6 o'clock. So we'll pop the link in there to register. It's in the chat box already. And tomorrow we've got the office hours on at 10 o'clock. So anyone who wants to come along, shoot the breeze about anything online. If you've got a question, an app, just want to have a chat about your business or any ideas, or you're stuck with anything, office hours is where we do that. So that's on Zoom at 10 o'clock Australian Eastern Standard Time tomorrow. So everyone's welcome to join. There's no agenda, there's no presentation. It really is a conversation and chat, and we do have some good conversations on that, which help to unravel some of these mysteries online as well too. So again, thanks very much everyone for coming along, and look forward to seeing you all again next week. Have a great week.
Thank you. Bye.